If you have been learning from the Be the Bridge podcast, our work, I want you to consider becoming a financial partner today. And the other way you can become a financial partner is by shopping our store. You can sport our apparel to represent what Be the Bridge stands for. And this donation goes to a special cause. And so just a reminder, our vision is seeing that all are equipped to flourish through expanding our reach and continuing to spread the good news of social justice. We are able to pursue this vision and fulfill our mission of empowering people and culture toward racial healing, racial equity, and racial reconciliation through your generous donor support. So thank you for supporting all that Be the Bridge does. Thank you for giving to us. And just remember, we're not the only way. We're just one way to get us on the path to racial equity, racial healing, and racial reconciliation. Thank you so much for your support.
We want to learn a little bit more about our Be the Bridge podcast family. We've created a quick survey for you to fill out. Make sure to click on the show notes and you will find the survey link at the end.
Be the Bridge, Be the Bridge. You are listening to the Be the Bridge podcast with Latasha Morrison.
How are you guys doing today? It's exciting.
Each week, Be the Bridge podcast tackles subjects related to race and culture with the goal of bringing understanding.
But I'm going to do it in the spirit of love.
We believe understanding can move us toward racial healing, racial equity, and racial unity. Latasha Morrison is the founder of Be the Bridge, which is an organization responding to racial brokenness and systemic injustice in our world. This podcast is an extension of our vision to make sure people are no longer conditioned by a racialized society, but grounded in truth. If you have not hit the subscribe button, please do so now. Without further ado, let's begin today's podcast. Oh, and stick around for some important information at the end.
Pastor Stephanie Williams O'Brien is the lead pastor at Mill City Church in Northeast Minneapolis. She is also a professor of ministry at Bethel University and Seminary in St. Paul, Minnesota. Stephanie has opportunities to coach leaders around the world through developing resources and through speaking, and her podcast, Lead Stories, that she does with her friend Joe Saxton. She is a sought-after leadership coach, helping women and men to be intentional with their influence in all aspects of their life. Pastor Stephanie is passionate about her communities and individuals participating in the mission of God to the world. Her first book was released in the fall of 2019 called Stay Curious: How Questions and Doubts Can Save Your Faith. Her latest book is Make a Move: How to Stop Wavering and Make Decisions in a Disorienting World. Be the Bridge family, I am here with Pastor Stephanie O'Brien. She is the lead pastor at Mill City Church. And I am so excited to have you here today.
I'm so excited to be here.
I know. We've known each other for a while. I've been on your podcast a couple times and got a chance to have lunch or dinner with you when I was on my first trip to Minnesota.
Yeah, and it was negative degrees here when you came. Do you remember that?
Yeah, and I hear now it's like plus degrees.
It's hot. It's hot. It's plus degrees.
Tell them how hot it is in Minnesota.
Right now, as we speak, it is 95 degrees, and the humidity says that it feels like 103. Wow. People just found out. Some people just found out it gets that hot in Minnesota right now.
I know.
But it's unusual. It's not usually this hot, especially not for so long, and not in June. So.
Wow.
But nothing normal has been happening in Minnesota in these last couple of years. That's the truth.
Nothing normal. And let's say across the world, nothing normal.
Yeah. There's no normal
2021
anymore.
has not been normal. Nothing is normal.
Maybe it helped us give up the idea that there is a normal.
Yes. When I was there were like frozen lakes, and I was freaked out about seeing a frozen lake.
Did you walk on one?
No, I was afraid. I was too afraid.
I'm going to get you out there.
I went to the edge, and then it was like, where it's still like snowy. And so my foot started sneaking, like kind of slipping in the snow. And I was just afraid that it was like, oh no, I don't know if this ice can hold me up.
People drive their cars on it and stuff.
I know. I saw that and I was just, it's something in my head. I'll have to come back and try it. And because I was with someone, but it was like they weren't from Minnesota, and the other person that was with us that was from Minnesota was driving the car and finding a place to park, and we ran out there really quick, and so I'll have to try it. But I'm telling you, but we got to make sure y'all have a really good cold winter first.
Yeah, it always freezes. Well, I can't wait to be there. I'm going to document it on Instagram when you. Do
it. Yeah. You may have to, because I'm going to be screaming. Well, listen, you have been doing a lot of incredible work. You wrote a book, you pastor in a church, you're leading, groups of women. Like, tell us a little bit about who Pastor Stephanie is, and what do you want people to know about you?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, I'm someone that just is trying to be on the heels of Jesus. That's what I'm about. That's who I am. Daughter of the King, obviously. That's what I'm all about, kingdom stuff. And I love thinking of my job description as having like a kingdom job description. I've got some, there's some human beings that give me some job descriptions at the places that I serve. But at the end of the day, like, what is my kingdom of God job description? And that I don't get paid for all that stuff. Some of it's being a good auntie. Yeah. But I am a wife to JD. We got married in our 30s. So we got some stories about trying to figure out how to merge two lives in adulthood. But it's going good. We've got two really energetic Springer Spaniels. I know you're a dog person too.
Yes.
They are off the wall. And I think, that's probably all the children we need. But we love kids. We don't plan on having our own kids, but we get to spend a lot of time with lots of different kids. And besides my niece and nephew, I mean, my church, Mill City Church, it's in urban Minneapolis. We've got so many kids, and they are so cute. I mean, I can have whatever one I want to hold. People are ready to give them to me. They say, here, you have this kid. You hold this kid. You can take this kid all day long. I love kids. My church, Mill City, I helped plant it. I'm a church planter. Started in 2008, and we worship in a public school, and we've been there since then. Had a brief stint where we've been out of there for the pandemic because the school's all shut down. But we're going to be going back in there in the fall, which we're excited about. And not
I saw your video. I saw your video. See that? Yeah, when you're going back. Yeah.
And all these people, we've got a few hundred people. Man, they're just so excited to go back into a building that's not even ours. It just shows like their heart. I mean, it just shows their heart.
Right.
And the school is a school that experiences a lot of challenges. The public schools in the Twin Cities do.
Right.
Actually, here in Minnesota, in the Twin Cities, which when I say Twin Cities, I mean Minneapolis and St. Paul, we have one of the largest education gaps racially in the country. And so there's a lot of struggles. And so for us, we've got a lot of things that our church is a part of, but being a part of the public school system and how we can be Jesus to people there has been key. We helped found a nonprofit called Every Meal that jumped out of our church and started with us trying to figure out how to make sure that the kids had food over the weekend. And we were able to do that for our whole school. And then my younger brother actually said, wait, I bet a bunch of churches could do this in the schools they're partnering with. And long story short, he launched it out as a nonprofit, and 270 schools are sponsored by Every Meal now. Isn't that nuts?
Oh my goodness.
I know, it's crazy.
All of this started with a congregation size of 100.
Yeah,
I'm
we're
just
like
telling
100
you,
people.
I mean, small groups of people can do mighty things.
It's so true.
I love it. Yeah.
So Mill City's, now that we're 13 years old, maybe like 400, 500 people, but we were just a little church and we started that. And God can do amazing things. So we've been doing some awesome stuff here. I also get the chance to teach at Bethel Seminary, which is here in St. Paul, Minnesota. Minneapolis and St. Paul are real close to each other. And that's been a real gift for me to be able to be a part of empowering and equipping the pastors of the next generation. I primarily teach preaching there, actually, and some of the leadership courses. And do a podcast with your friend and mine, Joe Saxton, the Lead Stories podcast. So that's been a blast. We've been doing that for five and a half years.
How do you guys get any work together done? Like you and Joe together?
Joe and I?
Like,
Here's the key. All we do is push record while we're having conversations we would already have.
Exactly.
That's it.
Yeah.
People say, how do you prepare? What's your plan? I'm like, oh, we just press record and start talking about the topic and see what happens.
Just see where it goes. How long have y'all known each other?
We've known each other for maybe 9 years now, maybe almost 10. It's crazy.
Okay.
And when we first met, she didn't live in Minnesota. And then we were connected over online, like you and I are talking now. And we were doing Zoom before it was a cool thing that everybody did. And then she moved to Minnesota for a job that she's had for a little while, doesn't do that anymore. And then we got to be, geographically close and then became, really close friends. Joe's one of my best friends and confidants, and I've learned more from her than I could possibly express.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
And I know that Minnesota has had a tough few years. I mean, and specifically, the African-American, the Black community there. Yep. And I mean, just even recently, just all the things. And so one of the things that a lot of people know about Philando, I got a chance when I was there to visit his memorial area and the George Floyd. And then, recently Dante, and so it's just so many hashtags. And how are you dealing with this as a church and maybe personally? What are some things that have been going through your mind? How have you been engaged with it, and how maybe has your church or churches in the community been engaged? Yeah.
Well, on one hand, it's just so devastating and heartbreaking that this is what's happening here in our city. And it's not new. It's not new that there's been police brutality. We just have it on tape more often now, have it recorded. But at the same time, it's really heartening to see how a lot of the followers of Jesus have responded.
Wow.
Being people of help and hope and prophetic voices and honest. And it's been really incredible. So Dante Wright was murdered just blocks from the elementary school I went to. And George Floyd's murder was just a couple miles from my house. I live in Minneapolis in the city. And when things are that close to home, it changes you. It changes you, as a person. And the hashtags have been, with Philando and Jamar Clark, and they've all made an impact. And when we set out to start our church, we had a few commitments from the beginning, and one of them was racial reconciliation. As a group of predominantly white people starting a church in a city, but for us that looked like listening and learning. That started with us saying, how do we come to physically go to Black churches, to African churches, to Latino churches, and listen and learn and come with open hands and say, how can we serve and how can we be partners? And so having those partnerships for the last 13 years sure does change the dynamic, right? Because then it's not, it's happening to those people. It's happening to us, our people, us. Right. We might be different churches that worship in different locations, and Minnesota's churches are really segregated since lots of the different places the geography is segregated. But my church, has learned so much. And I like, I feel like the word submit's going out of style, but submitting ourselves to the leadership of the leaders of color in the Twin Cities, that to me is the first step.
Right.
Because if that willingness to not say, that if the willingness to lay down the power and authority that I have, which I do. I mean, if you got the title pastor, you have it. Yeah. If you're a white woman like I am, you have it. If you're in the middle class, I could go on and on. Right. So laying that down, I think of it as laying it down at the foot of the cross.
Right.
And saying, okay, now that I've laid it down, do I have hands ready to receive what it is that I can learn, what God has for me in these relationships, and then where do we go from there? And so to be honest, these pastors have changed who I am and their congregations, but really saying that these folks, I think of Pastor Daryl Gillespie. He's over here in North Minneapolis. I think of that man as like one of my pastors. When he's when he's teaching and he's speaking out, when he's talking, I think he's somebody that pastors me. I always call him my cousin, Edrin Williams. We're cousins because my maiden name's Williams.
Oh yeah.
and we could not look more different.
Right. I know Edwin. I've heard of him. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's so good. And these folks have just changed who I am. Pastor Nicole Bullock, I could list a million names because it's an intentional choice to seek out this and welcome the authority of leaders in your life. Yeah. And so it would be, for me to say, here's some stuff my church did. I mean, sure, but the beginning of it is myself and the other leaders of my church and my church itself have submitted ourselves to the voices of leaders of color in the Twin Cities and beyond. And that looks like welcoming in folks to preach. That looks like folks of color in my congregation preaching and teaching, leading, being up front, having roles of authority. It looks like my elder board being diverse in every type of diversity, making sure that there's age representation and gender representation and ethnic background representation. And for us, when all of this has happened, it was really critical to me that when, for instance, when George Floyd was murdered, which of course shook the entire world, differently than maybe Philando, that didn't maybe go global, we didn't say anything we had never said before. And that was really critical because if it was the moment we decided to begin the conversation, let's just say it would have gone very differently in my church.
Right.
And so I wouldn't want to say anything like, all you have to do is say this and this and this, or do this and this and this, because that's not going to work. It has to be a part of your heartbeat.
Yes.
When there isn't a main hashtag filling the screen, it has to be a part of what you're about. And so for my congregation, it has just always been a part of it. And it doesn't mean sometimes there's still people who, like you always say, it's not for everybody. Some people, they're not going to be a part of it. So we've got folks that sometimes, head out because they feel like it's too hard. But we've been talking for years that this racial justice is a lifelong commitment and calling that we have together and as white people have specific role in. So to speak up and to talk about God's heart in the midst of the tragedies that happened in this last year, it didn't require us to say anything we hadn't said. And I think that was critical in this time.
You were already doing the work. I love that. And that's exactly why I wanted you on the podcast to really talk because, this is not about a moment, but it's about a lifestyle. This is not about, a short-term commitment. This is about conviction. And what I've seen, what has led you is that a conviction. This is the foundation. This is a value for your church. And one of the things I love what you were saying when you were talking about submitting to pastors of color, but you were saying going and visiting and going into those spaces. And I think that's the new thing. I was just talking to someone and they were we were just talking about what is it going to take? Because I think so many times white pastors can focus on how do I make my church more diverse? Or how do I get people of color to come to my church? And I'm like, well, why won't you just go and visit their churches? Why don't you establish partnerships? And I love that because sometimes those environments are not conducive, for, especially if you haven't done any work. But I think the partnerships, showing locking arms and showing the community, one global church, that has many different expressions is really also a part of the answer, and so I love what you're doing in that. I think it's a different way for people to look at things. And I love your leadership and how you're leading. And we're just in some crazy times where it is disoriented. And I wanted to have you on too, because I think what you're doing and who you are is very hopeful. It's very hopeful to BIPOC people to hear this because right now we're in this crazy season where it was kind of like this awakening. And after awakening, there's this pushback, there's this discord, there's rejection. It's historical. We know that. But it's not everyone. And sometimes the loudest voices are sometimes the wrong voices,
Well, that's it. Right.
Yeah. And so I just wanted also our community to hear that there are churches, we hear about things, what's happening in Minnesota and with all the different hashtags. But to hear about how, the community, the churches are coming together and locking arms. It may not be everyone, but how, at least Mill City Church is, and some other ones are doing it.
Yeah, and some other predominantly white churches too that have said, hey, maybe instead of praying that our church becomes more diverse, let's pray that we're people that would actually be safe for folks to come in. Let's start doing that, and we took some of the work that Be the Bridge has done on whiteness and just started hosting whiteness classes, introduction to whiteness.
Wow.
And we created some spaces for the BIPOC folks to mostly support, of course, led by leaders of color. But as a white pastor, I just said, who wants to learn about this? I'm trying, and I'll do it with you. Let's join in. And we had, in our little church, we had over 80 people sign up for this class just in a few months.
Wow.
And we went through some of the resources that you all have and made sure everybody bought that PDF though.
Yeah.
Y'all everybody get your own copy. Okay?
Yes.
Go to the website. But watching people have, we were on Zoom because it was during this last year.
Yeah.
But you could see in people's faces having this realization, oh, so when we talk about white supremacy, we're not talking just about white supremacists.
Exactly.
Oh, and working through some of the things and helping say, okay, it's okay if there's maybe some feelings of ownership and guilt, but not shame. How do we move out of that? What does it look like? How do we address our fragility? How do we, and me saying, I'm doing it with you. I'm with you in this. I'm not telling you how to do something that I figured out, and then saying to everyone, I know this feels uncomfortable, but this is a choice that we can make to stay in this tension. And it matters to people because if we can not center the whiteness, but confront it, then we can actually be people who create a space where we could have these dialogues among difference.
Yeah, I love that. And I love how you're leading with. You're leading with, it's like you're saying, hey, I don't have all the answers. I don't even have all the resources, but I can point us to some resources. I love that. I love that. I mean, what would you say to some other pastors now, that have, and I know this is work that you've done for a while, so you've been grooming your community like this. How have you groomed your community? Because I know you've had some challenges, but what would you say to encourage other pastors who are, this getting pushback where they can't even use the word white supremacy, or just even to say white response or fragility is like a no-no, right now. It's like, you're trying to make me feel, you're trying to shame me, you're trying to bash me. What would you say to some of those pastors now?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I've had those conversations with other white folks that are struggling, and I think on my best days, the Holy Spirit gives me compassion for how someone got to where they're at and hope for where they need to go. But, for a pastor who's feeling that in their congregation, I often think of the tipping point principle, the idea that if 20% of people in a community begin to get a vision of something, there's a tipping point and it spreads. And so I would encourage people to take those conversations out of the pulpit and into the spaces that feel like they're level ground. I mean, speaking of power, having a pulpit, that's not a dialogue, that's a monologue. And whatever we're preaching about, if we know our community has diversity amongst that area as far as how they're receiving it, which is true of anything, I think there's a sense of how can we have some of these conversations in spaces that are going to help folks be able to ask questions, be able to push back, in a healthy way, be able to say, I don't understand what you're saying. One of the things that I've done, and I'll be honest, my community, we can talk about those things on a Sunday, but many, many white churches, you can't, of course. One of the things I've done in many spaces I'm in is put on, even online, I've said, hey, look, I actually don't debate. I don't do debates because I'm not into that. I don't think they really produce anything. But if you want a dialogue, I remember when Ahmaud Arbery was killed, I said, if anyone is confused about why this is not just another person of color that's been killed, but is systemic, let me know. Slide into my DMs and ask me questions. Do you know how many people had never talked and never read anything about some of these laws that are creating situations where it would be questionable whether or not it was legal to shoot someone while running? No, I mean, they're just, and we can talk for a long time about why people do or don't know things. But when I've made myself available to a dialogue like that, I've had some fascinating conversations. And I've learned how to understand where people are coming from. And that's helped me in conversations because if I know kind of where they're coming from, I can dialogue with them better. And if someone starts to debate, I say, oh, nope, sorry, I don't actually do that. But when I've said I'm actually here for a dialogue, and that's actually not going to happen on my Facebook wall, I'm going to block that. But here's where there's some space where no one's going to judge you for the ignorance and whatever you're feeling. People did that for me. They helped me learn stuff. They're still doing that for me. How can I create a space where you can, like you said, like learn alongside, learn with? And if pastors can do that with just a few people and have one-on-ones or smaller groups of conversation, I really think that tipping point can happen for people. And then at some point, I think we just have to be willing to say, is there a point in which there's too much at stake to not say what needs to be said? And there's too much at stake to not even at least try to move towards these conversations. And I know that means it costs people's jobs. And I know that means it costs money in the offering plate. But, I'm like a little Bible Belt girl. Like my family's actually from Louisiana. So I still have that thought in my head. When I see Jesus at the end of my life, what am I going to say?
Right.
And not trying to shame, not out of shame, but like when I see Jesus face to face, I mean, he's here, he's with us. What am I going to say I wasn't willing to talk about or wasn't willing to say, or who I wasn't willing to be an ally to? What do I want? And not what other people think, not what my congregation thinks or my conservative family or my liberal family thinks, but the King of Kings is the only one I answer to at the end of the day. What did I do or say or not do or not say? That's the actual question I think pastors, all of us, need to boil it down to. And if it means we end up looking for new jobs, it might mean that. I don't know. So I just want to encourage somebody that we've got to let the Holy Spirit lead us through some of these things, because if we get shut down and say, hey, we're not going to touch it, we're not going to broach it, we're not going to go there, gosh, man, I think that there's something that we could miss out on the power of the Holy Spirit moving into these spaces that are bringing freedom for people.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's great. And I think that will be helpful to some of the people that are listening, that they can share this message with maybe some of their pastors or pastors that are listening. But I'm glad that you have invited people into your DMs and into your private space so they can stay out of mine. No.
Yeah, that's right.
But you know what? That's what a part of being an ally and accomplice is in this, is that, don't expect people of color to do that, because it is, it's draining. It's not to say that it's not draining for you, but to kind of have to affirm and, humanize and teach all the time. And so when we can get allies that can say, hey, I'm available, don't bother them. Come at me, with that. I can appreciate that. And I love that. Now, not only are you pastoring a church, leading groups, doing a podcast, and all the other things, you done wrote a book.
Yeah, right. Crazy.
You wrote a book, and tell us a little bit, about your book, Make a Move.
Yeah, so it's interesting. So the subtitle is How to Stop Wavering and Make Decisions in a Disorienting World. And when I suggested this as a title for a book I'd like to write, it was before the pandemic was a twinkle in anyone's eye. It was before the response and the revolution that came from George Floyd's murder. I mean, so guess when I had sat down to write it, though? It was after the pandemic started. I had it all outlined and ready to go. Hadn't started writing it. So I wrote most of this actually during the pandemic.
Wow.
And Make a Move. The reason I talk about that is that I know that the idea of listening to God and what does God want for me, and I'm trying to make decisions, there can be this almost like I'm going to sit and wait until God says something, and then when I receive it, I'm going to go. And kind of the premise I have here in the book is that's not what we normally see in Scripture. Like, for the most part, people are just kind of, especially like in Acts, they're just like, seems good to us in the Holy Spirit. Oh, the Spirit of Jesus won't let us go there. Oh, I guess we're doing that. Hey, I think we're supposed to find a man from Macedonia. Never mind. Lydia, she's a woman. Okay. Like
Right.
It's just a lot more like, and I say it's not trial and error, it's trial and learn.
I love it.
And that's, I think, the following the Holy Spirit, the counselor, the guide that Jesus promises us looks more like that. And I think that disorienting and experience of feeling disoriented, or Joe calls it disorientated. She said that's the British way to say it. Disorientated. She said disorientated. But I think that experience is a universal one. We all experience that disorientation sometimes.
Yeah.
But of course, we had that in common this last year. But I would call the process of reckoning with white privilege and race and my lack of experiencing racial conversations growing up and all that, I would call that a disorienting experience. And it's kind of like, if it's not disorienting, am I actually confronting it? And so what does it mean to say, okay, I can lean into that and move through that instead of saying, ooh, I don't like feeling disoriented. I'm going to turn around and go in the other direction. And so it's kind of fit the moment, whether it's the pandemic or the uprisings or figuring out how to take steps forward. I mean, this is really at its core, how do we listen and respond to God? Because if the God of the universe is trying to lead us, like, let's try to figure out how to follow that for real. Let's try to figure out how to follow that for real. Let's try to figure out how to follow that for real. Let's try to figure out how to follow that for real.
This is so good. Aren't you loving this conversation? We're going to take a quick break. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Friends, life is hard, and sometimes we need a little help. Navigating the stress of sudden changes in income, health complications, and/or the loss of someone close can be overwhelming. Not to mention the stress of the tense time of political and social disharmony. Honestly, at this time, we all could use a little help. Well, guess what? There is help. There's help through BetterHelp.com. That's better, H-E-L-P. BetterHelp.com makes professional counseling. It makes it accessible, affordable, and convenient for anyone who may be currently struggling with life's challenges. If that's you, you can get help anytime, anywhere. BetterHelp.com offers access to licensed, trained, and experienced and accredited psychologists, marriage and family therapists, clinical social workers, and board-licensed professional counselors. We want you to start living a happier life today as a listener. And as a Be the Bridge listener, you'll get 10% off of your first month by visiting BetterHelp.com/BeTheBridge. Again, that's BetterHelp.com/BeTheBridge. So you can join over 1 million people who have taken charge of their mental health. You guys, it's a difficult time, and we need these tools, and we need a little help to encourage us on the way.
Thanks for staying with us. Let's get back to our conversation.
I don't think we don't like not being in control.
Yeah.
And I think what the pandemic led to was, hey, you're not in control. Like, you have no power in this,
Yeah.
And I think that was disorienting for a lot of people. And the same thing, what happens when you start doing this hard dive of excavating some of the ideologies and belief systems, that we framed, that can feel disorienting. That's hard. That's difficult. And so we want to, when something feels hard and difficult, we equate it to being wrong.
Right.
It's wrong,
Yeah.
and I think this is so helpful for people, because life is about turns and twists,
Yep.
Life altering decisions. I think about, who would have thought I would be sitting here, doing a podcast, doing what I'm doing. Just by saying yes,
Yeah.
like the same thing, with you and so many people who are listening. And I love how you use that when you talk about, people in the Bible's like, okay, we're going to go this way. Yeah. And I was hearing, his name just completely left me, but he's was a part of the civil rights movement. And I'm going to think of his name in a minute, but I cannot think of it right now. But anyway, I heard him speak. And I was listening to him, and Andrew Young. And I was listening to him speak. And he was, like you think like there's some strategy that went into what they were doing. But when, he was like, when we decided to kneel and pray, and in the midst of, people pointing guns at us, like that wasn't planned. That was like, we had to listen to the Spirit. You know, he said we didn't know what we were doing. You know,
No.
we didn't know if we were going to die or not, but we went. And I remember that thing just sending chills. Like, it's like that thing, because every moment and that I've taken is like, just do the next right thing.
Right.
Whatever that is, like, just
Whatever
do the
that
next
is.
right. Yeah. And I think that your book is helping us get some practical advice and action steps for moving through those type of situations, you know.
I remember when I was a kid, I would look in the back of my Bible when I got bored during sermons, and it has those little maps of Paul's journeys.
Oh, wow.
And I'd like follow my finger on these little journeys, and, you know, that map was made afterwards. Like, it's not like Paul was given a map and then he knew how to follow it, you know. But sometimes I'm like, okay, Jesus, where's my map? You give me the map, I'll start going.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for the map, though. So you give me that map. And that's just not how how your story goes. That's not how my story's gone. I wouldn't have done anything I'm doing if it was about following a map.
Yeah. What do you want people to gain from reading, Make the Move? What do you want to help people get unstuck? What else, would you like people to gain from that?
Helping people get unstuck is huge, because I think that we can have a lot of decision paralysis, or like analysis paralysis, I call it sometimes, where there's so much coming at us. And the more that's at stake, I think the harder it is to move through when we feel the paralysis that we might feel. I think a lot of people feel that in bridge building, because it's like, okay, well, is this right? What should I do?
Right.
And we could do a lot of things, and turns out you're not going to do all the things. You have to actually figure out how to discern the next best thing for you, right? Like you said. And so I think that that's what I'm hoping for people. I'm also hoping a lot of the book I talk about figuring out who kind of your like discernment community is. Who are the people you actually trust to make these decisions with? I'm watching more and more people as a pastor. I'm watching more and more people try to go it alone on some of this stuff, whether it's racial justice, whether it's trying to find their mission and the purpose in life, whether it's job changes or decisions they're making with their spouse. I'm like, listen, you and your spouse and one good friend is not a community. That's just 3 different people. So what does it mean to have those people? And I'm noticing how rare that's becoming. And so seeking that out and praying through that and saying, as single people, as younger people, as people that are in the empty nester stage, where are the other people that discern with us how we're going to invest our one life and what that means? And so I really not writing to any one group of people, but the fact that all of us, we're going through different transitions, or we're feeling stuck. And another thing that I just really feel passionate about is people not settling for less than, what God's really inviting them into. And I'll tell you, if you actually try to say, listen, Holy Spirit, I'm up for it. What are we doing? You will never be bored. Okay?
Right.
Like you might be a lot of things.
Here I am, Lord.
Yeah, exactly. But also trying to dismantle some of that, like, well, God's going to have me do the last thing I want to do. No, he's not. Like, he made you with the things that you're passionate about. And it doesn't mean it's going to be easy. I mean, read anybody's story in the Bible. It's not easy, but it's nothing that's worth it is. And so, I just want to encourage people and give these tools to say, let's press into it instead of running from it, and do these things with intention and keep moving, and not let it turn into like the waiting game that sometimes is less about waiting on Jesus and more about waiting in the deep waters of our fears and not actually moving towards what God's doing. So.
Yeah, and you have this process you outline for discernment is a form of experimenting.
Yeah.
What does that look like practically? And how does this fit with the bridge building work?
Yeah. So I'm not a scientist, so I'm just going to put that out there. But, the scientific method is relatively simple, and it actually works really great, because what are scientists doing? They're trying to answer questions they don't know the answer to. That's what they're doing. And same thing with a decision and trying to figure out how to step into it. And I also think that making an experiment creates a space for us to see what God might be doing in that space. And so to say relatively simple, I just kind of outline, all right, the first thing is, what question are you trying to answer? What do you already know? What research have you already done? That's what a scientist would do. What's the first experiment you want to do that's going to teach you more than you know now? What are the steps of that experiment? And then when are you going to review what you learned? It's that simple. And I think what that can do is help us get from a place of kind of wandering and wondering to like moving towards something. And just like anything else in life, like if you actually physically move, your vantage point is going to be different. You know, if I get up and walk across the street, I can see something I couldn't see when I was in my front yard. That is what movement does. It changes your vantage point. And so I think experiments do that. So in the book, I talk about there's lots of different types of experiments that people could do. Relational experiments, trying to figure out dynamics in friendships, community, romantic relationships, you know, whatever. Vocational, because that's a huge question, right? Many of us, that's a big, you know, for me, that's one of the biggest parts of my life is thinking about vocation.
Right.
And then missional experiments and mission and purpose. And kind of outlining different ways to do that. And so instead of saying, okay, I'm feeling like I'm supposed to be a bridge builder. All right, what should I do next? That's a great question. Maybe let's start with an experiment. So even picking up a resource is an experiment to say, okay, well, I have never read about this before, or intentionally listening to the stories of people who had a very different life than you, and perhaps grabbing a couple friends and saying, okay, we're going to spend some time this month and we're going to listen to stories. What if this month we're going to only listen to podcasts, only read books, and only watch TV shows that are produced or written by people that aren't white? Just for a month. And then us 5 friends, we're all going to do that, and then we're going to get together at the end and we're going to talk about it.
I like that.
That would be an experiment. I mean,
I love that.
Wouldn't that be cool?
I love
and you learn
it.
so much. You learn so much.
Right.
And, you know, and I just think, or another experiment could be, instead of saying, well, I wish that I could figure out how to have, you know, deeper friendships with people who are different than me, saying, well, what if for this month, I'm going to go every week to a coffee shop in an area that's more diverse than where I live, or a different type of location owned by a person who's not the same as me. And I'm going to sit and I'm going to watch and listen. Not like freak people out, like come and listen and sit, do your work, read your book, look around, notice what's different about this coffee shop here than it would be if I was in my neighborhood. These are the types of experiments that actually shape who we are so that we're moving towards something. I'm all for people reading books. Your book is excellent. The resources that Be the Bridge has, let's do it. But this isn't, bridge building's not a syllabus, everybody.
Right.
Like, hello. And it's not like some like multicultural professor's going to come give you an A or a B.
Right.
Like, that's not it. It's a long-term thing. So read the books, watch the things, but experiment in behaviors that change and shape us. Because I think we can behave our way into new thinking. And we can also think our way into new behaviors. You know, psychology would say both and. And so experiments get us into that.
Repeat that again.
Okay.
Stephanie,
Wait a
repeat
second.
that again. Okay.
Yeah. So an experiment is an action.
Okay.
And when we take action, we behave our way into thinking differently.
Right.
In psychology, if you do certain things, it's going to change the way you think. Well, it's true also, if you think differently, it might change your behaviors. Like it's actually been debated in psychology forever, but the truth is both are true.
Right.
But sometimes we're like, well, I'm just going to keep thinking and hope it changes my behavior. And what I'm encouraging, and I think that's very common for, you know, I would say like dominant North American white culture, is if I can just think differently, then my life will change. And there's also well, how about I take some steps of action and that will change how I think and change my experience.
Right.
And putting myself in a different vantage point. So that's what the experimenting is all about. I get into the weeds of it in the book, but I think it's a concept that anyone could try tomorrow.
You got to do some work.
Yeah. You got to do some work. And it doesn't mean it's going to be easy, but it doesn't mean it can't also be really good and fun and interesting and life-changing too, you know?
Right. Now, I want to rewind a little bit.
Okay.
And you talked about getting married in your 30s.
Yeah.
And basically trying to consolidate all your 30-year-old lives.
Yeah.
into this new. What has that been like, you know? And what has been encouraging about that? And what has been challenging about that?
Yeah.
I caught you off guard, right?
No. I mean, I kind of thought I was just going to do the single life. Like I was okay with that. And I'm going to be honest, like the Holy Spirit confronted me on my independence, because while that's a good thing, I think it was venturing out of the good part of it. And I'm a super companion oriented person. And so I think that part of my, like, you know, lady leader was like, I can do this. I don't need no man. But, and you don't.
Right.
But the question comes down to, what is God inviting me into in my life? And so when I made myself available to what that might look like, I did some experiments in that area. And I talk actually about these quite a bit in the book. I talk about the guy that I dated before my husband, and how that led to my first panic attack trying to decide about that, and didn't work out. And then I met my husband online, and another experiment that I did, and this is real. I told a bunch of my friends, and not just like the friends that were my age, like like they call it a weak tie, like my mom's friends or my auntie's friends. I said, hey, if you introduce me to my husband, I will take you on a round trip ticket to anywhere in the United States.
Ooh, maybe I need to do that. I like that.
See, listen, it makes people not so selfish and self-focused real fast when they know that they could get something.
Oh, wow.
So now, in a lot of ways, that experiment worked, not because that's how I met my husband, but because they actually introduced me to some very nice men who helped me learn about what I was interested in. None of them were like weirdos, like, any weirder than me. And, it was good. So it helped me. And so that was an experiment. And there's no such thing as a failed experiment, except that one that you don't try. And then even online dating, I just saw that as an experiment, man. Like one that you got to make sure you do it wise and whatever, have people accountability and whatnot, but just like anything else. And that was great. I mean, I met my husband online in a way that I was just at that point being real upfront about what I do and what I'm called to. In seminary, when I was in pastor school, me and my other friends that were all gals, we joke, how many dates do you go on before you tell him that you're going to be a female pastor? Like, when do you slip that in? And I just resorted to, he's going to know before we go out. I don't have time to deal with this.
You ain't wasting my time.
Yeah, I don't waste my time. And also, like, it's not my battle to fight.
Right.
The person needs to be on board with what we're doing here. Yeah. And so, in the end, God brought me my husband, JD, who is a pastor's kid. His dad's a pastor. And I kid you not, had dated a female pastor before me. That is for real. He's got a type. And whatever that is fine. And he's not a pastor. He's not called to ministry, except for, like everyone else in my church. He serves in the church. He does a lot of awesome stuff, but he's a filmmaker actually and storyteller. So that's what he does in marketing and different things like that, which is a great pair for me. But so I'm a storyteller in the pulpit, and he's a storyteller on film, and
I love it.
It's amazing. But man, yeah, you've got first of all him. So he's also white. But we have some very different cultures. Turns out, turns out you can grow up 15 minutes from each other.
Wow.
And both be in the same kind of like brand of church and be very different. And so that's when people are often talking about how we are forgetting to explore what it means to have culture when we're white people. Hello, look at your marriage, okay? Like, look at your in-laws and say, it's not that they're crazy and you're normal. There is no normal. They have a culture that's different than yours, and there's some good and bad things about some of the things they've experienced. Right. And so that's a lot when you're 34, 35, and you're going, whoa, we didn't grow up together. We're trying to relearn some stuff. And man, it's a lot.
And so you met him online.
Yeah.
And you were 15 minutes?
Yeah, we were 15 minutes apart for our whole lives, basically, since we were little kids.
And did you know each other? Did you know of each other?
No, we never met. But we had 20 Facebook friends in common. So I went to those people and I said, you could have gotten a trip.
Wow.
But you weren't thinking. And most of our friends, they said, you know what? I never would have set you two up, but now that you're together, it totally makes sense. That's almost verbatim every single person.
They missed it, and they missed the trip.
Yeah.
15 minutes. Oh, my goodness.
Right? But
that
he's like they say, behind every great woman, there's often the guy. No, I'm just kidding. You know how they always say that? They always say that about male leaders.
Yeah, with women.
No. Look, everybody.
You flipped it,
yeah,
right?
Look, everybody. Like, Latasha and I can both be leading, whether married or single, man. It's fine. Listen, don't do that. But better make sure that if you're going to partner your life with somebody, they're going to be an asset to what you're doing.
Exactly.
Because that's what's at stake.
Yeah.
I'll tell people time and time again as a pastor, there is no point in hitching your life to someone else's if they're not going to help you serve God better. That's it. Like, what's the point? It's too hard.
Say it again. Say it again for
There
the
is
people in
no
the
point.
back.
There is no point. If they're not going to help you serve God better, then it's too much work. Like, that's the thing. Being married, too much work unless it's going to empower you and you can empower them to make a difference in the kingdom. I don't see another good purpose for it. Like, just to keep populating the earth is not a good enough reason, to be honest, in my opinion, in my opinion.
And I know you get, and I love how like just confident you are in that. And I love the fact that you're saying, hey, we have some dogs, we're not going to have any children. And now what else? Because that's like, people feel like there's this formula or there's this model that you have to follow. And, whether you decide to get married or not, or you want to get married or not, all those different things, everybody has a different journey. And I think we need to stop really trying to box people in and make them fit in our little Christian pocket.
Absolutely.
And how, nice and neat.
Right. And because married people, man, you better have other people in your life than just that person. They can't be everything. Yeah. Single people, you need those people too. People with children, don't you want some of us to not have children so we can help you out?
Right.
Yes, you do. So that's it. We have to, but we're so far, especially, white culture is so far from supporting each other collectively. And some of the struggles in mental health and anxiety that I'm seeing, it's different for every space. But when I look at, when I look critically at my own culture, I think part of it's because we're so isolated and ruggedly independent and expecting then this one other human being or these children to fulfill our lives. And there's not any collective this sense of, maybe it'd be good if multiple people were trying to help you discipline those kids.
Wow,
and you see that beautifully in other cultures. And so I think there's a lot that we can learn from that.
I love it. And I mean, even you mentioning white culture, like some people will listen to this and be, what culture? Like, what, what are you talking about? But if they've been through any of the Be the Bridge information, they will get that and understand that. I mean, there's a lot happening in our society, and you're a pastor, and I know you're leading, and I just have to mention this, especially with the work that you're doing. There's a lot of people in the work that we're doing right now, specifically people of color, to see some of the lash as it relates to racial justice work, and I would love for you to, and some of the pushback of, Marxism and communism and leftists, and what's the other one? CRT. Everything is CRT now. Someone posted a passage from Ezekiel, and someone said, that's CRT. I'm like, what? So now Ezekiel is CRT. You guys have lost your mind. Like, what in the world? Yeah. I mean, I just want to have a moment for you to just speak into that. What encouragement do you have for people of color, and then also for people who are getting some of that pushback? Yeah,
man. Well, look how many isms we can come up with so we don't have to deal with racism.
Exactly.
Whoops, what? Hey, everybody. Yeah, like you said, we don't have to look too far back in history to see how trying to deflect into it's a form of gaslighting, to be honest, right? To say, well, no, this isn't true. We're going to start talking about these other problems, like, for instance, Marxism or communism or whatever fears people might have. That deflecting from what somebody is trying, especially when what someone is trying to say is their lived experience as a person of color. I mean, that's a form of abuse, in my opinion, to deflect away from what someone's saying before you fully heard what they're saying. Sure. I mean, when it comes to CRT or different theories that, there's a bunch of different opinions about things. Everything we take with a grain of salt, everything we take critically. We even as we approach scripture, there's lots of interpretations. How do we have some fear and trembling and humility that we are not the people who know everything? And perhaps when we're trying to so quickly, I'll use the word like demonize or put something into a category that we haven't really learned about. How many people know what CRT stands for that are out there campaigning against it? I mean, just to be honest, like, would you know what that acronym is? Yeah, who developed it and why it was developed? But besides kind of the, like you said, the like lash. I had a conversation with a gentleman, and he was pushing back, not on CRT necessarily. He was talking about, why do I have to even think about what happened to Dante Wright? Why does that have anything to do with me? He was doing that kind of thing. I just listened to him and I said, what do you think it is about you and me that has this part of me that just so badly wants to not be implicated in something? And as we believe that Jesus is sitting here, what would I say to him about how deeply I want to not be a part of XYZ problem? What does that mean? I love this idea. Can we interrogate our thoughts and say, what is that? Why is that need? Don't push it away. It's there, right? Why do I feel this need to defend myself so desperately? And what does that mean in light of the gospel of a God who has taken everything for me on a cross and has sacrificed everything for me, who did nothing to deserve it? And I am so, vehemently not wanting to be implicated or complicit in something before I could even think critically about whether or not that's true. And so, I'd say to other leaders like me, we've got to start with ourselves. I was able to ask that gentleman that question because I'm asking it myself. Why is it that I don't want it to be my fault? Why is that always the reaction that I have? And if it doesn't come out of my mouth, it's somewhere in there, Why is it that I don't always feel like I need to confront that bias that I notice in myself? And it's just not out of trying to shame, but to be curious about it. Like, could we be curious about why that's the case? Instead of just saying, is it true or not? Or can we hammer onto these things and jump on them? I just think there's some introspection and some reflection. And when I asked that gentleman that question, he said, I don't know. So I think that's just a really important question. And if Jesus was sitting here right now, what do you think he would say about how you've been speaking about Dante Wright and what happened? Well, I don't know. So I just think, I don't know for sure either, but we believe the Spirit of Jesus is with us in these conversations. And so what about what these lawyers have learned that have resulted in the critical race theory makes us think that there's nothing God might have been doing through them to bring wisdom? Like, I have to be sure that they could not possibly, because they're not Christians. Wait a second. Do we think that God is not working through people who are made in his image in every field, regardless of if they acknowledge him or not? It doesn't mean that anything's absolute truth and all that kind of stuff, but how are we not willing to hold space for a discussion before we've already judged it from any perspective? And I say that to myself as I listen to some of these folks say stuff. I'm going, how did you get here? Well, let's ask some more questions and see how we can get there. And I think of leaders of color. I just want to say, if you need to exit those conversations, just do it. Like, that is not, I know that some people, Latasha, I know you feel called to these spaces, but we as white leaders have to come into some of those spaces and absorb some of that, because it is damaging to people. Yeah. And I'm sorry that that's the case. I'm sorry about how that's experienced. And I see that in the culture that I'm a part of, I see that desire to be the exception, that American exceptionalism. And I see that in myself. And so I know why we get there, and it's terrible. And I'm so sorry. And I'm grateful for the work that so many people do. But I also want to say, you can go out, you can take a break. You can exit stage left, just leave them in here with me, and we'll keep talking, because it is, it's been so painful. And I just think it must be exhausting.
Yeah, that's so good. That's so good. And I know that's going to really encourage our community that's listening, that is like, does anybody get it? Like, this is so crazy, to us to hear this, and how this is, going into mainstream now, and all those different things. But what is bringing you hope right about now? What are some things that is bringing you hope?
Oh man, there's a lot of things. My church starting to get back to worshiping together, and just realizing that, I know not everybody is a musical worship person, but I think there's something the Holy Spirit can do through worshiping together that brings healing. And so I'm praying for other churches to be able to start doing that. We were trying to be real safe, so there's a lot of time we weren't together. So we're just beginning to that. So that's been giving me a lot of hope and a lot of life. And I continue to follow all of what's happening in the response to George Floyd, having just had the 1 year anniversary here. There were some really peaceful and wonderful celebrations that happened that were sober celebrations, but celebrations nevertheless, because a person's life is worth celebrating. And so much came from that moment and that experience that no one should have had to die to be able to move forward. But I feel like there was there were celebrations and there was also remembrances. And there was something really life-giving about hitting that 1 year mark and seeing how many people were still saying, this is what we're doing. And conversations I've had with people that said it wasn't until that happened that I made the commitment that this is a lifelong process for me. And I heard a story the other day by this woman named Janelle Austin, Black woman who has been invited by the community to be the caretaker of George Floyd Square, which is the exact intersection where George was murdered. And there's still a memorial to him, and people are holding space there every single day. This is a place of prayer. Like there are people that are praying and leading, leaders of color that are leading in that space. And Janelle is a Jesus follower and is an incredible woman. People probably don't even realize like the type of work she's doing. The idea of caretaking, they take every memorial that's left, and before it can get rained on or anything, they're documenting it, and they're taking it and they're putting it in and caretaking for all of the emotions that are being poured out in this space. It's incredible. I know you stopped by when you were here, and I heard her talking on the radio the other day. I got a chance to talk with her once earlier this year, but I heard her talking on the radio, and I knew it was her just like listening to her voice. And then they said, "Oh, yes, this is Janelle Austin," and she was telling this story about how a white man had maybe like a 20-something, had gotten a little tipsy, gotten drunk, and he had spray painted something on one of the murals, and he was invited the next day because he didn't remember it happening because he was so out of it. He was devastated. And he was invited the next day by Janelle and some of the others to enter into a restoration process, to restore him from the action that he took that was clearly coming from some deep place in himself because he was not totally aware. What's going on in your soul that this happened? And I know that this man comes from a place of faith. And she was describing this process of how he volunteered to caretake at the corner then with them for a number of days and a number of weeks. And the first day he was there, he was taking some of the notes that had been written, and he was putting them into these notebooks where they're keeping them and they're writing stuff down. And she watched him grab the first one, and it said, "Black lives are made in the image of God." And she watched him like hold this piece of paper. And she said, I could see on his face this realization, I had desecrated the face of God. Like that wasn't just George Floyd's face. It was a person made in the image of God. And she said, I just watched this like transcendent moment where he realized like the divinity and what it means that God has created all these people in God's image. And that's what it means when you spray paint onto something that's in the honor of someone whose life has been lost. And I think about that and I think, that gives me so much life. Like that gives me so much life because of the work that Janelle's doing and because a restoration process like that can happen to a guy who's got a substance problem, and that that story got told in public radio. You know, I just feel like there's so much that can happen if like with Make a Move, like if we can just say, God, I want to be on your heels. What are you doing and how can I respond? If that was our orientation every day, like that just gets me excited. If we could wake up every day and say, all right, I got stuff on my calendar, but in the midst of those things, God, what are you doing and how do you want me to join in? I
love it.
That's where we're going to figure out how we can leverage privilege and be people who bring hope and help and learn. We can do that in our everyday space, the spaces we're already in. That stuff gets me excited.
Yeah. God, what are you doing and how do I respond? If we approached every question with that, because we know that God is moving and doing something. We sense it, and I hope people do not miss it. Like my prayer is for people not to make the same historical mistakes. Like I don't want to see anyone miss it, and I wish we did more of the restorative justice, like what was done to this young man. Like I would love to see us move toward that, restoring people back to community, loving them back into community. And this work is hard, it's difficult. You're a pastor, you're a wife, you're doing a lot of things. How are you taking care of yourself? How are you practicing joy and self-care?
Oh man, that's such a good question. I love stand-up paddleboarding.
Oh, wow. Tried that once.
Listen. Like, if I can get out in nature, like I told you earlier, it's been hot. But if I can do stuff like that, oh, it's so good. And I'll tell you another thing. I need to sleep. I don't know what it is with some people saying I need 6.5 hours. I'm like, give me 8 hours of sleep. I need this whole pandemic, I got some solid 7.5, 8 hours, and I was not ashamed. If that meant I didn't get up till 9, whatever. Like, I need to get it. So there's little things like that where you just got to say, look, I need my sleep. I'm a grown woman, but I need to sleep. Okay. That's what I need to do. So I need to sleep. I need to do that. And that gives me the energy to ask those questions about what the Spirit might be doing. And that's been good. It's been good.
Because you had sleep, right? You could say, okay, what is the Spirit doing? Because I've had a little sleep.
Otherwise, you ask that question and all of a sudden you're asleep. You're out of sleep. You can't even. So yeah, that's been good. Just getting out in nature. And I like getting out in the snow too. But those are the things. I've just had to keep that going. That's what it's been for me for sure.
Well, it's so good to talk with you and to give our audience a glimpse of who you are. Go pick up her book and just, follow her on all the socials. We'll post everything. Yeah. But I'm just so grateful for your work and what you're doing in Minnesota. And, one other thing I was gonna say, I know that there's some other things you like to do that I didn't know that you like to do. I was impressed. You just remodeled some stuff in your house, right?
Yeah, that is that. I mean, I know not everybody would think home remodeling is life-giving and self-care, but for me, it is. I love that kind of stuff. I wouldn't call myself a designer, but I like to pick up my own design and stuff. Yeah. Come on my Instagram, Pastor Steph, and you can see my, home renovation, my own little HGTV show. We remodeled the whole first level of a house, and my brother and I did a lot of the work ourselves, and it's really fun because you just, you get to see something get it completed, which doesn't happen in church ministry a lot. You know what I mean? Like, people aren't projects, so you don't get to check them off a list. But I got to check stuff off a list and got to see something go from 0 to hero and put in my backsplash, and it was a blast.
I never went back to see the finished projects. I just know, I like to decorate, but you were knocking down, removing cabinets and knocking down walls. I'm like, wait a minute, this is like demolition. What is happening?
Man, that saved my life over this last winter. Oh, wow. Because I got to do all that active stuff in my house, my new house, and so it's almost done. So the final steps will probably be done this weekend, and then I can post all my before and after pictures. But,
okay. So I didn't miss it. No.
There was a couple before and afters along the way, but what a privilege. I mean, I'm really passionate about housing, and like I mentioned, in Minnesota, housing disparities are huge, just like education disparities. And I'm really passionate about affordable housing and this different stuff. And so learning about how to do things in my house is just a part of that passion too, and getting to be a part of that and encouraging other people to take steps towards home ownership and figuring out how to do that. I was 25-year-old single gal the first time I bought a house. Right. And, let's be honest, that was because my mom had a signature that helped me do that. Right. That's a big deal. Yeah. So what does it look like for us to have those conversations? So I feel like it's a thing that God's given me, like a passion and a joy that I get so excited to see other people step into also. So yeah, kind of not the most typical hobby that a gal pastor might have, but you might find me with some power tools.
I love it. Well, thank you for joining us on the Be the Bridge podcast. I mean, I'm so grateful that you're a bridge builder, and most importantly, that you are a follower of Christ. So love you. And
love you too. Thank you so much. It really was. Thanks for having me.
Great.
Go to the donors table if you'd like to hear the unedited version of this podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Be the Bridge podcast. To find out more about the Be the Bridge organization and or to become a bridge builder in your community, go to bethebridge.com. Again, that's bethebridge.com. If you've enjoyed this podcast, remember to rate and review it on this platform and share it with as many people as you possibly can. You can also connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Today's show was edited, recorded, and produced by Trayvon Potts at Integrated Entertainment Studios in Metro Atlanta, Georgia. The host and executive producer is Latasha Morrison. Lauren C. Brown is the senior producer.
And transcribed by Sarah Connatser.
Please join us next time. This has been a Be the Bridge production.